All right, let's go start with naval bases. I think I already did air bases. Not a big fan of the air base adding the range, unless, like I said, the ubiquitous air bases throughout the. I mean, you got a dirt strip on these islands in the Pacific. Why would it increase the range? Airdrop tanks, maybe, but isn't that a development? Yeah, that's a tech development. So I can't figure out a reason for air bases increasing ability. Logically, it just doesn't make sense to me. Scrambling, yes, because some air bases we have a better radar system, and they're subject to damage. Uh, but it's inoperative if it has three or more. Now, why wouldn't you up the game and just damage it at one? One, you can't use it. You need to wipe away all the damage. Um, I'm not sure, but I think that would be up in the air. Okay, let's go with naval bases. Cost 15. Why do these cost 15? More than a minor complex. An airbase? Airbase is dirt cheap, dude. Dirt cheap. Get it? Dirt cheap. Dirt airstrip. So not sure. Naval base, that's more costly. Could see that. Okay. I'm just just thinking through everything. Increased sea range. Again, I'm sitting here going, why? What's the deal there? Don't know of anything that would make a naval base increase range. Don't know. Don't know why that would be. Can't see it. What would be naval bases? Automatic repair. Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Um, yeah, I don't know. So let me just read this. All sea zones that border a territory containing an operative naval base are considered to be serviced by that naval base. Sea units serviced by a naval base confer the benefits of that base onto all friendly sea units in that zone. All sea units beginning their movement from sea zone serviced by an operative friendly naval base gain one additional point of movement range. Sea units in this position can move 3 spaces instead of 2. Capital ships, aircraft carriers, and battleships can be repaired by moving those units to a sea zone serviced by an operative controlled or friendly naval base. Damaged ships are repaired at no IPC cost during the purchase and repair phase of their owning player's turn if they are in a sea zone serviced by an operative friendly naval base, including one repaired in the current turn, subject to damage. A naval base is considered to be operative if it has 3 or more inoperative if it has 3 or more damage points. It can't service sea zones, increase sea unit range, or conduct repairs. And again, I say, why would it give range? I don't know. Land units. Okay, I'm going to go through these. So cost 3, attack 1, defense 2, move 1. I don't know. 3 is infantry. Honestly speaking, I've always thought there should be like 2 infantry classes. One would be militia, and another would be infantry. And obviously infantry at 3 is interesting. I would say you don't attack when supported by artillery. Artillery again fires first, just logically, and then when the battle actually occurs, obviously you have fortified positions, but tanks or mobile guns. Smaller artillery units would be a lot more effective. So like you would think like a mech artillery and infantry would attack it at 2, because then you'd be able to wheel around I suppose I'm overthinking that. But anyways, let me just say that I think there should be another infantry called militia. That's worth the cost 2. Attacks at 1, defends at 1, maybe. Just an idea. I think Russia early on, but well, no, not early on. China and Russia early, just and the Japanese in some way, shape, and form. Just threw themselves into fortified positions and reckless, Supported by artillery, increases the attack to a 2. What about supported by tanks? Then I suppose I'm thinking in terms of the truck instead of the mech. So the mech is actually an infantry unit that's been carried there by a truck. But if a truck was a different unit altogether, and again, you might in some ways have free trucks. I don't know. Anyways, maybe that's. I know that Battle of the Bulge dealt with that stuff, but I'm just not seeing the artillery and infantry support. I'm seeing obviously tanks. Tanks would obviously increase this by 1 as well, so I don't know why you wouldn't want to include tanks here. All right, artillery. These support infantry and mechanized infantry. Again, I'm in favor of the targeted attacks and the and also the first strike. So, anyways, let's keep going. This can blitz with a tank, a single tank, when paired 1 for 1. Okay. Supported by artillery, increases to a 2. Yep. All right. Let's see if I can get this over here. All right. We have excess mechanized still have an attack of 1. Okay. Good. I'm in favor, by the way, of a single round of combat. I might have mentioned that in the combat. I like the war room contested Axis and Allies. World War I contested zones. I think that would make a huge difference helping the Allies out. So tanks, 3 and 3. So this is a problem. I do think the distinction between light tanks and heavy tanks should be a distinction that's made. I think all tanks should start out probably a 3-2. Making them more vulnerable, and then some sort of necessary technical. I mean, the only good tanks at the beginning of the war that I know of were the Russian tanks, and certainly the early German stuff during the Blitzkriegs were not great tanks. As far as I know, I've been told they were much worse than the T-34s and the KV-1s, and the KV-1 might have been later, but I'm not sure. But the French tanks, they had better tanks. So this might be one of those, you got to pair it up with a plane, a Stuka. Then you get a 3-3. But as it is, I'm not even sure about. The movement of 2 is the big thing here. This is the big thing. And it does make the attack more effective, obviously, because it's faster. But if you brought this cost down to 5 and had a 2-2-2, unless accompanied by something else, that's the key. This is very dependent upon being accompanied by something else, particularly air or ground support. Then you could have these better attack values. So that's some of my thoughts on tanks. So I definitely want 2 sorts of tanks. Let's go on to, so you got a blitz. You can go through a hostile zone. The blitzing, the tank establishes control of the first territory before it moves to the next. Second territory can be friendly or hostile, and even the space the tank came from. A tank may not blitz through a territory that contains an enemy unit, even if that unit is an AAA, industrial complex, air base, naval base. That's interesting. And something. Why? Why? A little bit. I got a little bit of a Y there. Not sure. Got an answer. Good answer. Combined arms, tactical combined with tactical bombers and mechanized infantry. So you increase the tactical from a 3 to a 4. I'm trying to figure out why this comes in as a natural. I would think the other way around. This goes from a 2 to a 3. The magic of the Blitzkrieg, obviously, but increasing the tactical to a 4, maybe with a plane involved. I don't know. So I would say something like this is attacks at a 2, unless accompanied by an attack bomber or a fighter, and then the attack bomber needs. I think the attack bomber needs the airplane, not the tank. But okay, I'm good with it. Whatever. Both. How about both? Could go up to a 3 or 4, given the airplane or given the tank. And if you're going to throw in the tank there, by the way, how about mechanized infantry? I mean, why not? What we're talking about is speed here, the advantage of the Blitzkrieg. Each mechanized infantry unit combined with the tank can blitz through. So I'd say that the attack bomber might be able to be bumped by several things, not just the tank, for ground combat. All right. I think they are bumped up by the airplanes. So, but maybe the mech too. AA guns, limited move during the non-combat phase, no combat value. I think that's probably wrong. I think you could, combined with a mech, be able to pull them into combat and fire at the airplanes in the combat. Air defense. Fire at an air unit only when that air unit attacks land or air units in the territory containing that AA gun. The AA unit fires only once before the first round of combat. Each AA unit it's weird how these columns go. May fire up to 3 shots, but each attacking air unit may be fired upon only once. In other words, the total number of air defense dice rolled is 3 times the number of AAA units and the number of attacking air, whichever is the lesser. For example, 5 attacking a territory containing 2 would have 5 shots fired against them, while those same 5 would have only 3 against them if there was only 1. Once the number of air defense dice is determined, the dice are rolled. For each one rolled, the attacker must choose 1 air unit as a casualty. These casualties are removed immediately and will not participate in the remainder of the battle. This is AAA. Fire occurs immediately before normal combat occurs in territory containing the AAA. The AAA unit does not defend facilities against strategic. That's stupid, I said. The facilities have their own built-in air defense. So here I would say that if this is just like artillery in my view. So if you, I'm trying to think through this, if you have no aircraft in the battle, why would the AAAs not continually fire? And the answer is, of course, that they would. So I kind of think the AAAs should keep firing. Like I said, I'd prefer a single round of combat. But if you're going to do multiple rounds of combat and there's no friendly air in the sky, why wouldn't you? I say you do, making the AAA guns better, and yeah, it's good stuff. Fighters, tactical bombers, strategic can be attack and defend in territories. All can attack in sea zones. Fighters and attacks stationed on carriers can defend in sea zones. All air units can land only in friendly territories, or in the case of fighters and tacticals, on friendly aircraft carriers. Your air units can't land in territories you just captured, whether they are involved in the combat or not, and in territories you just converted from friendly neutral. All air units can move through hostile territories and sea zones as if they were friendly. However, they are exposed to anti-aircraft fire during combat whenever they attack a hostile territory that contains a AAA unit. When conducting strategic or tactical bombing raids, bombers are exposed only to the aircraft fire from the industrial complex or base, not any AAA units in the territory. How does that make sense? Sorry. To determine movement range, count each space your air unit enters after takeoff. When moving over water from a coastal territory or an island group, count the first sea zone entered as one space. When flying to an island group, count the surrounding sea zone and the island group itself as one space each. When moving a fighter or tactical bomber from a carrier, don't count the carrier's sea zone as the first space. The unit is in that sea zone already. In other words, each time an air unit crosses the border between spaces, whether territories or sea zones, it uses one movement space. I think that's silly. Going from Hawaii, I think Hawaii should be, part of the sea zone. So I don't think that should count. Bigger islands, yes. Smaller islands like Hawaii, I mean, seems a little silly. So, I suppose you just would have to name the islands. Like Japan seems big enough to count as an island by itself, but Hawaii, no. Air units based on coastal territories and islands normally can't defend adjacent sea zones. An exception to this rule is fighters or tactical bombers in such territories that have an operative air base. These air bases can be scrambled and moved to an adjacent sea zone if they come under fire. Strategic bombers can't be scrambled. You cannot deliberately send air units into combat situations that places them out of range to land afterward. In the combat move phase, prior to rolling any battles, you must be able to demonstrate some possible way, however remote the possibility is, for all of your attacking air units to land safely. Okay, so Doolittle bombing raid. I'm sorry, but Doolittle bombing raid, they had no place to land. The Japanese get their kamikazes. We don't get a Doolittle bombing raid? Really? Seriously? Again, Axis wet dream and not taking into account historical examples. It's problematic. Okay, well, declare a Doolittle bombing raid once per game, if that's what you want to do. But really, I mean, I'd get rid of the kamikazes altogether and say that 6 aircraft may be used, and that would even out the game a little bit, right? Kamikazes are just regular planes, and that should be the way it's handled, but it's not. So let's go back. As far as scrambling goes, I like CAP. I've already said I like CAP a lot better. Civil Air Patrol. This could include a combination of combat moves. It could also include non-combat moves by carrier or the mobilization of a new carrier. In order to demonstrate that an air unit might have a safe landing zone, you may assume that all of your attacking rolls will be hits and all defending rolls will be misses. You may not, however, use a planned retreat of any carrier to demonstrate possible safe landing for any fighter or tactical bomber. Once possible landing zones for all attacking air units have been demonstrated, you have no obligation to guarantee those landing zones for air units in the course of battle. For example, aircraft carriers may freely retreat or be taken as casualties, even if doing so leaves air units with no place to land after combat. Such air units will be destroyed at the end of the non-combat move phase. However, during non-combat movements and new unit mobilizations, you must provide for safe landing for as many as possible after all combat is resolved. You've declared that a carrier will move during the non-combat phase to provide a safe landing zone for a fighter or tactical bomber moved in the combat move phase. You must follow through and move the carrier to its planned location in the non-combat move phase unless the air unit has landed safely elsewhere or been destroyed before then, or a combat required to clear an intervening sea zone failed to do so. Likewise, if you declare that a new carrier will be mobilized to provide a safe landing zone for a fighter or tactical bomber, it must be mobilized in that sea zone unless the air unit has landed safely elsewhere and has been destroyed. Air units can hit submarines only if a friendly destroyer is in the battle. Okay, let's see. Move this over a little bit. Okay, so tactical bombers. They cost 11, attack 3, defend 3, move 4. Attacks represent dive bombers and torpedo or dive bomber planes in naval operations. Tacticals can land on and take off from carriers. Fighters can be combined with matched pair of fighter and tactical. Increase the tactical bomber's attack value from 3 to 4. Combined arms tanks can be combined with Tactical bombers, a matched pair of tank and tactical bomber increase the tactical bomber's attack value from 3 to 4. A tactical bomber can either participate in normal or make a direct attack against an enemy air or naval base. Such an attack on a facility is a tactical, bombing raid. Strategic bombing. Strategic bombers, they can go on SBRs, strategic bombing raids. Cost 12, attack 4, defend 1, move 6. Strategic bomber can either participate in normal combat or make a direct attack against an enemy industrial complex, air base, or naval base. Such an attack on a facility is a strategic bombing raid. Fighters, cost 10, attack 3, defend 4, move 4. Fighters can land and take off from a carrier. Fighter escorts. I think medium range bombers would be helpful. I think. Could be. You could convince me to go do this as a bomber and then sort of a super bomber. Let's see. So fighter escorts. Fighters can participate in strategic and tactical bombing raids as escorts or interceptors. Any and all defending fighters based in territory that is about to be bombed can participate in the defense of the industrial complex and or bases that are targeted. Escort fighters. Those accompanying the bombers can escort and protect the bombers, and they can originate from any territory or sea range permitting. Sea zone range permitting. All right, let's go to finish up with sea units. Battleships, aircraft carriers, cruisers, destroyers, submarines, transports move, attack, and defend in sea zones. They cannot move into territories. For the sake of these rules, the following are surface ships: battleships, carriers, cruisers, and destroyers. Transports are not warships, submarines, or warships, but they are not surface ships. All sea units can normally move up to 2 sea zones, and an exception to this is ships in a sea zone and that is serviced by an operative friendly naval base. You can move these ships 3 sea zones when departing from the naval base location. They cannot move through hostile sea zones. If enemy units other than transports or submarines occupy a sea zone, the sea zone is hostile and your sea units end their movement and enter combat. Submarines are an exception. They can pass through hostile sea zones without stopping unless there is an enemy destroyer present. Some sea units can carry other units. Transports can carry only land units. Aircraft carriers can carry fighters and or tacticals, but never strategic bombers. All surface and warships and submarines can conduct convoy disruption. Okay, by the way, there is technology. Obviously, there are some of these things that had a lot of speed and a lot more speed than others. So I do think that you could actually have sea units that would be able to travel 3. I'm not denying that. I'm denying that an air base would provide that advantage. That could be a great tech, or a gradual tech that the Allies get, for instance, 3 turns in, or the Japanese get 2 turns in. Battleships cost 20, attack 4, defend 4, move 2. Capital ship. The battleship requires 2 hits to destroy. If an undamaged battleship is hit once, even by a submarine surprise strike, turn it on its side to mark its damage status. Okay, so right there, I would say submarine hits that baby with a 1, the baby goes down. Okay, you get a 2, no problem. But if he gets a 1, you go down. 1, 2, doesn't matter. You have 2 ships, doesn't matter. You gotta put some teeth into these dive bombers and these submarines, and they have to be able to get past and really hit these things. Don't remove an attacking battleship from play or move a defending battleship behind the casualty strip unless it takes a second hit. If a battleship survives combat having taken 1 hit, it can be repaired by a visit to an operative friendly naval base. Offshore bombardment. Your battleships, along with your cruisers, can conduct offshore bombardment during an amphibious assault. Aircraft carriers. Cost 16. Attack 0. Defend 2. Move 2. Capital ship. Aircraft carriers require 2 hits to destroy. Let me smooth this over a little bit. Okay, undamaged carriers hit once, even by a submarine surprise strike. Turn it on its side to mark its damage status. Don't remove an attacking carrier from play or move a defending carrier behind a casualty strip unless it takes a second hit. If a carrier survives combat having taken 1 hit, it can be repaired by a visit to an operative friendly naval base. And by the way, if you get hit, if the battleship or the carrier gets hit, the battleship should have an effect. That shouldn't be able to attack at 4, defend at 4, and move 2. That needs to have some consequences to it. Carrier aircraft. An aircraft carrier can carry up to 2 air units, include those belonging to friendly powers, provided both powers or these air units may be of two types: fighters and tanks. Air units on a friendly power's carrier are always treated as cargo on the carrier's owner's turn. Carrier aircraft move independently of the carrier on their own turn. They move along with the carrier on its turn if they belong to a different power. On the air unit's turn, they launch before the carrier moves, even if they are not leaving the sea zone themselves. It is possible for the carrier to make a combat movement when leaving its attack aircraft behind to make a non-combat movement later. During non-combat movement, fighters and tactical bombers may use their temporary movement to move into sea zones with carriers in order to land on them. Carriers may also move, provided they didn't move during the combat move or participate in battle. In fact, a carrier must move if it's able or remain in place in order to provide a landing space for an air unit that would not otherwise have one. Landing doesn't actually occur until the mobilized new unit phase, so air units and carriers must end their movement in the same sea zone. Any air units that are not in an eligible landing space by the end of the non-combat phase are destroyed. Note that this can include a sea zone in which a new carrier will be placed during the mobilized new units phase. A damaged carrier cannot conduct air operations, which means that no air units may take off from or land on it. Any guest air units that were on board the carrier are cargo at the time when it was damaged, are trapped on board and can't leave, attack, or defend until the carrier is repaired. Any air unit that was planned to land on the carrier must find another landing spot by the end of the non-combat movement or be destroyed. Air defense. Whenever an undamaged carrier is attacked, its aircraft, even those belonging to friendly powers, are considered to be defending in the air and fight normally, even if only submarines are attacking, and the air units cannot hit them because there is no defending destroyer. Air units based on defending carriers must land on the same carrier if possible after the battle. If that carrier is destroyed or damaged in combat, they must try to land on a different friendly carrier in the same sea zone, moved one space to a friendly carrier or territory, or be destroyed. The movement occurs during the non-combat movement phase before the acting player makes any non-combat moves. When a damaged carrier is attacked, any air units on the board are considered cargo and can't defend. If the carrier is lost, they are lost along with it. Cruisers. Cost 12, attack 3, defend 3, move 2. Offshore bombardments. Okay, destroyers. Cruisers, yeah, they cost too much. Could I say 10? Could I say 10? Attack 3, defend 3. You'd never buy a battleship, obviously. 11? Reason you would... Yeah, I guess 11 would be the best I could do there. Destroyers. Cost 8, too much. Attack 2, defend 2, move 2. I'd put these at 6. Anti-sub vessel destroyers are especially equipped for anti-submarine warfare. As a result, they have the capability of canceling many of the unit characteristics of enemy submarines. Destroyer cancels the treat hostile sea zone as friendly unit characteristic of any submarine that moves the sea zone with it. This means that the submarine must immediately end its movement, whether combat or non-combat, upon entering a sea zone. If a submarine ends its combat movement in the sea zone with an enemy destroyer, combat will occur. If the destroyer is in battle, it cancels the following unit characteristics of all enemy submarines in that battle: surprise strike, submersible, and can't be hit by air units. Note the destroyer belongs to a power friendly to the attacker that happens to be in the same sea zone as the battle, don't actually participate in it, therefore they don't cancel any of these abilities. Note that destroyers belonging to a power friendly to the attacker that happens to be in the same sea zone as the battle. What the heck does that mean? Certainly not when at war. When at war, any destroyer does, I think. I could be wrong. That's odd. That's such a bad rule. If it actually applied to the attacker. No, okay. So we're not talking about defending together. We're talking about somehow your destroyer is in an area that you're going to attack that has an enemy force in it. So it must be politics right there. Okay, so problems with this. I think that it should be a one-on-one match. Maybe if you want to go with two-on-one match, but I think one destroyer cancels one sub. That's what makes the most sense. I mean, these things are... I mean, this is complicated warfare. Watch Greyhound. I mean, it's intense. And it should be really a one-for-one. Submarines, cost 6. Attack 2, defend 1, move 2. Submarines have several unique unit characteristics. Most of them are canceled by the presence of an enemy destroyer. Surprise strike. Both attacking and defending submarines can make a surprise strike by firing before any other units fire in the sea battle. As detailed in Step 2 of the general combat sequence, submarines make their roll before any other unless an enemy destroyer is present. If neither side was eligible for a surprise strike, there is no Step 2. Players move directly to Step 3 of the general combat. Submersible submarines have the option of submerging if it can do so any time it would otherwise make a surprise strike. The decision is made before any dice are rolled by either side. The attacker decides first and takes the effect immediately. When a submarine submerges, it's immediately removed from the battle strip and placed back on the board. As a result, it can no longer fire or take hits in that combat. However, a submarine can't submerge if an enemy destroyer is present in the battle. On station, each submarine in a convoy sea zone is considered to be on station. As such, it's spending much more time in the sea zone and is more focused on locating, destroying convoys. While on station, each submarine rolls 2 dice when disrupting a convoy. Treat hostile sea zones as friendly. A submarine can move through a sea zone that contains enemy units, either in combat or non-combat. However, if the submarine enters a sea zone containing an enemy destroyer, it must It must end its movements there. If it ends its combat moves in a hostile sea zone, combat will occur. It doesn't block enemy movement. The stealth ability of the submarine also allows enemy ships to ignore their presence. Any sea zone that contains only enemy submarines doesn't stop the movement of a sea zone. A sea unit. Sea units end their combat move in a sea zone containing only enemy submarines may choose to attack them or not. Sea units can also end their non-combat movement in sea zone containing only enemy submarines. Can't hit air units. Can't be hit by air units. When attacking or defending, hits scored by air units can't be assigned to submarines unless there's a destroyer that is friendly to the air units in the battle. I would say that defending subs can attack at a 2. I don't know why they wouldn't be able to do that. I'm trying to figure out a reason why you wouldn't want it defending at a 2. And I can't find it. Transports, cost 7, way too much. Oh, I love War Room, doesn't even deal with these buggers. No combat value. Even though a transport can attack or defend either alone or with other units, it has combat value of 0. This means that a transport can't fire in the attacking units or the defending units' first fire step. Transports may not attack without being accompanied by at least one unit from an attack value, with an attack value, unless they are conducting an amphibious assault from a friendly sea zone that is free of enemy transports. Doesn't block enemy movement. Any sea zone that contains only enemy transports doesn't stop the movement of sea units. Air and sea units with an attack value ending their combat move in a sea zone containing only enemy transports automatically destroy these transports, unless they are ignoring them to support an amphibious assault instead. This counts as sea combat for those sea units. The sea units can also end their non-combat movement in a sea zone containing only enemy transports, in which case there would be no combat. Chosen last. Transports can be chosen as casualties only if there are no other eligible units. Normally this will occur when only transports are left, but it can also occur under other circumstances. For example, air units attacking transports and submarines will hit the transports because they cannot hit the submarines without a friendly destroyer present. Carry land units. A transport can carry land units belonging to you or to your friendly power, provided you're both at war. Its capacity is any one land unit plus 1 additional infantry. Thus, a full transport may carry 2 infantry and 1 tank, mechanized infantry, artillery AA unit plus 1 infantry. A transport cannot carry an industrial complex, air-based, naval-based land units on a transport or cargo. They can attack or defend while at sea and are destroyed if their transport is destroyed. A transport can load cargo in friendly sea zones before, during, and after it moves. Transport can pick up cargo, move one sea space, pick up another cargo, move one more sea space, and offload the cargo at the end of its movement. It can also remain at sea with the cargo still aboard, but only if the cargo remaining aboard what was loaded in the previous turn was loaded this turn in the non-combat move phase, or was loaded this turn for an amphibious assault from which the transport retreated. That's a funny one, actually. That retreat. I gotta read that retreat rules again. Loading onto and offloading from a transport counts as a land unit's entire move. It cannot move before loading or after offloading. Place the land units alongside the transport in the sea zone. If the transport moves in the non-combat move phase, any number of units aboard can offload into a single friendly territory. Land units belonging to a friendly power must load on their controller's turn, be carried on their turn, and offload on the latter turn of their controller. This is true even if the transport remains in the same sea zone. Whenever a transport offloads, it can't move again that turn. If a transport retreats, it can't offload that turn. A transport can't offload into territories during a single turn, nor can it offload cargo onto another transport. A transport cannot load or offload while it is in a hostile sea zone. Remember that a hostile sea zone contains enemy units, but that for purpose of determining the status of a sea zone, submarines and transports are ignored. A transport can load and offload without moving from the friendly sea zone it's in. This is known as bridging. Each such transport is still limited to its cargo capacity. It can offload in only one territory, and once it offloads, it can't move, load, or offload again that turn. Once it can offload in only one territory, and once it offloads, it can't move, load, or offload again. A transport can take part in an amphibious assault step on the conduct combat phase. This is the only time transports can offload into a hostile territory. During an amphibious assault, a transport must either offload all units that were loaded during the combat phase or retreat during sea combat. It can also offload any number of units owned by the transport's power that were already on the board at the start of the turn. All right, as far as transports go, these were pretty fast, by the way. These weren't not a slower ship. I do like targeted attacks by subs, so I think you should be able to pick, and then there's got to some sort of process of whether you pick, you roll it, and if you're going for targeted, you got to get a 1, not a 2 or a 1. If you're in a bigger battle, I think a 2 or a 1 is fine, but if you're targeting attack, I think it's got to be a 1. All right, and I would say you'd be able to target transports in the middle of a fleet if there's no destroyer present. All right, Crockett 36 out.